Happy
Welcome
New
back
Year!
to Insight Club! Yay!
Welcome back to Inside Club, and today we're talking about how to stop suffering. Stay with us.
The first rule of Insight Club is you don't talk about Insight Club. You do Insight Club. The second rule of Insight Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. The third rule of Insight Club is you check all your other assumptions at the door. We hope these conversations will bring you insights that incite you to action. Welcome to Insight Club.
And you ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
It's perfect because it's in our intro, right? We all want to avoid suffering. But like, how do we do that?
Yeah, so many forms of suffering, and we talked about how we hold on to the suffering because it's something known already. One thing that has been coming to me quite a lot, and in the discussions with the sisterhood as well, is how much we have a low um, threshold for the pleasure and the good things, and we, on the other side, we can stand suffering for when it's soft suffering. We can stand it for a long time because we have this protection system where something is going really well and we're happy and joyful, and then we even uh, Brene Brown talks about this. Like, we have that feeling like something's going to go wrong. Be alert, alarm, be careful, danger. There's something bad ahead. And even movies push that. Like, when everything is going well, something bad has to happen because there needs to be that roller coaster.
Yes.
So when things are going well, we actually get afraid and we tend to self sabotage and try to find something to suffer about. So
Yeah.
things stay the
I
same.
found it so helpful to read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks
Yeah.
because
Me
he
too.
puts that in the context of our evolutionary history. And it hasn't been all that long, he says, that happiness, things going well has been a thing for for humans. So I really appreciate that because it's a way to like cut ourselves some slack because we can then we can suffer about how we keep bringing ourselves back to suffering, right? Like, it's one more way to suffer, to be like, oh man, anytime I'm really happy, I undermine myself or I sabotage myself, and we get caught up in that. So I just find that such a gentle um view. Like, cut yourself some slack. This is new. You're having a new experience in um the wave of human evolution. You're a pioneer.
Yeah.
I mean, then oh gosh, like what a cool turnaround is that? You're like, I'm a pioneer. Oh, let me get curious. What are some ways that I can recognize when I'm going into that self-sabotage, and then choose something different? And I was just thinking about this morning. Um, my father's family are Jewish, and they came from Romania to the United States in like 1914. So they weren't in Europe during the Second World War and all of the stuff leading up to it. But kind of out of nowhere this morning, that thought popped into my head. Like, it was my grandparents' generation that was going through that. That was I remember why the thought came up, and it's so funny how random my brain is.
Mhm.
But that's just not that long ago for life to have been so incredibly bleak. And there's a particular flavor of suffering there, right, with people who were in camps and in ghettos. But anybody who lived through that period, I mean, the Second World War was a time of massive inflation, massive economic insecurity. People didn't have enough food to eat. I always remember this like image, or maybe it was earlier, Yeah, but like of people burning money for warmth because inflation was so high. People in Germany literally burning paper notes for warmth because it was worth more as fuel than as anything you could, exchange it for in the marketplace. So I just like that's really not that long ago. And here you and I are in this space of like, oh my gosh, we see the ascendants, we see the Aquarian age, and we see all this. I mean, but it just has not been that long since our grandparents, and even our parents' generation was worried for, is there enough food to eat? And is some, totalitarian government going to come knocking on the door and kill us? Like, okay, no wonder. No wonder we get a little nervous when things are going well.
We haven't learned to enjoy fully yet. And I love that you brought up the Big Leap book, because that's one to come back. There are so many practices in that book that helps you expand on that, and even the questions that you brought already in one of the episodes as well, with like, is that true, and is can be very helpful in these moments, because often we suffer more for the stories we create in our mind than for what's really happening.
Yeah. So I believe Byron Katie, who does the Is This True? I believe she has a background in psychology or psychiatry. I may be wrong about that, but I'm seeing this pattern because Gay Hendricks is a psychotherapist. And the book I was mentioning to you before we went live, one of the co-authors is a psychotherapist. And so, I mean, maybe this shouldn't be surprising to me, but like when I think of people who can actually lay out, here are some steps you can take to move out of suffering, like that seems like a discipline that's bringing a lot of value. And I maybe I tend to discount that too much, as like, well, it's working with the mind and you can't solve the problems in the mind with the mind. You just kind of go in loops. But people who've studied how the mind works and can help you move from one state to another, I mean, that's a huge value.
One simple one that is the one that I keep coming back when I feel like, okay, nothing is helping, is regulating the nervous system. And you know that my practice is humming, is singing, it's coming back. And I love the humming, especially because it's not just that you get out of the mind. Often if I just start singing, I'm gonna sing all the problems first, which helps as well because you end up getting into a better thread later. But the humming helps you harmonize the mind, the body, and everything that's happening as well. So once you get back into the body, you end the disconnect with yourself, it's easier to get back on connecting with the higher self, the higher mind, your guidance, and so on.
Yeah. And also, I mean, singing your problems, it sounds like a really beautiful way to not take yourself as seriously.
Yeah, it is. Often the rhymes can make you laugh at problems pretty quickly. And create funny connections.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, that's like the top tip number 1 today to escape suffering is make some rhymes, throw down some rhymes around your problems.
Take that with good humor.
Yeah.
It's funny the words that pop in your head when you are trying to rhyme. Sometimes it's something like, that's so weird, but deliciously weird.
Yeah. And like you're making lateral connections and seeing with a bigger perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, suffering is absolutely something we have a big tolerance for. It feels kind of normal, and it's supported by a lot of people will say, well, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. Right? And that there's somehow more reality. And so let me just like jump into, I'm rereading this book, The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander and Rosamund Stone Zander. And I'm thinking maybe I want to reread it like at the start of every year because it's just so helpful. It's like steps to, hey, is this, is this the kind of thinking you find yourself in? What about this? And it's so joyful. But there was a moment where they were talking about this idea of glass half full and glass half empty. And they said, actually, it's the person who says the glass is half full that is the realist, because that person is relating to the substance. Like this glass is, half full of whatever's in it. And the person who's saying the glass is half empty is using a conception and abstraction of there should be something else in there and building these layers of abstraction into the situation. And I was like, hot damn, I got as far as neither one is like more true than the other, right? Like it's a preference, but I prefer, they're saying, no, it's more in line with reality to say the glass is half full because you're relating to the stuff.
It's more objective for sure. That's so interesting. I used to see that as like a lack perspective or an abundance perspective, because what if you had the glass empty? Would you say like then you could say the glass is empty, but why would you expect to be anything in there? It's only in the moment that there's something in there that you're going to relate with what's lacking.
Yeah. And I mean, the glass is empty. Beautiful. I can fill it up.
It's okay.
This,
Yeah.
this
I have a glass that
ready
a
to receive.
useful tool.
Yeah. But I really appreciate the reminder that our suffering most of the time comes from abstractions. Of course, there is suffering. I'm in physical pain. Somebody's broken my heart, and you're in that moment and it doesn't feel like an abstraction, but it's that well-worn groove, that well-worn rut of expecting things not to go well, that takes the pain, physical or emotional or mental, and presses it further into suffering with the story of this is always happening to me, or I'm not worth loving, or I'm always hurting myself, or now I won't be able to do that thing I wanted to do because I've hurt myself. And to recognize that that's an abstraction and a choice. One of the things I feel happening more in my life lately is space being created around these moments. I got this image from Eckhart Tolle's, oh gosh, is it A New Earth? I've struggled to remember which title it is, but he's talking about a client of his who would get very angry and like react, and he guided her and helped her to create a moment of pause and some space around the anger. And when I first heard that, I couldn't even conceptualize it, because I would find myself angry and I'd already be like halfway through the really biting sentence. I'd already be yelling before I regained consciousness and was like, oh, I'm angry. And I was like, I couldn't imagine, what does that mean to have space around it? How could you, when people would say like, pause and think before you react, I'm like, I'm not even aware I'm doing it until like I'm halfway through it. So but then because I had that conception, I was able to work toward it and build it. And now I'm finding, so I have space around the anger, and now I'm finding I have space more and more around the suffering too. Where,
okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to that because you mentioned 2 books with different visions on anger to me before we started recording.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's one of them.
No, the Art of Possibility was one of them. Yeah,
so
yeah.
I would love to hear more about the perspectives around anger, because anger is just another form of suffering.
Yeah.
It's just an easy for me. I would even I have to say like anger is probably my favorite form of suffering, because when I go to anger, at least like I often when I get catch myself getting too sad, I push myself to anger to up the energy, because anger is up in the energy scale. So I can do something with anger. I can do nothing with sadness.
Yeah.
So anger can push me to do stuff at least. So yeah, but still, then I get stuck in the anger, and that's the thing that I need to transmute afterwards. We can stay angry for a moment if that will be the fuel that we need, but you can't just stay in anger all the time. It's not the best place to be. It's disconnected still, even though it's fuel. So yeah, I wanted to hear the perspective that you got on anger and your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, so I'm always like, reading a couple books at the same time. So I'm rereading The Art of Possibility, and I'm also reading my very first Deepak Chopra book, The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desires. And The Art of Possibility is from the perspective of he's a composer and conductor, but he's also a teacher. And then the co-author is a psychotherapist. So those are two fields, at teaching and psychotherapy are fields where you encounter somebody who's stuck, and then you come in and you help move them through and guide them, right? Like it's a rubbish educator and it's a rubbish psychotherapist who's like, well, just stop, just stop feeling that way. So their book, The Art of Possibility, is these exercises that really, as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I can feel myself moving through the stages and stepping into greater possibility. And it's so interesting to contrast that with the Deepak Chopra book, because having never read a Deepak Chopra book before, my conception of him is kind of like what I've seen on media. And that conception was like, I am enlightened and I am a spiritual leader. And he's basically saying, well, you just shouldn't feel angry. I mean, you shouldn't repress your anger, but you just shouldn't feel angry. I'm like, what an unhelpful thing. What an absolutely unhelpful. I shouldn't. And that should is a direct path back to the suffering, which is what the other book is really unpacking, right? The other book is like, hey, whenever I'm in the should, I'm going to be suffering because I'm holding on to something that is not happening. And that's contrasted with I'm allowing what's happening. And that's like a perfect analogy in the body, right? Because if you, let's say you hit your elbow on something, right? And it hurts. When you clench and you focus on the pain, it hurts more. You relax, you rub it, you go, oh, I'm so sorry, elbow. I love you. I hit my elbow all the time. Taking the clothes out of the washing machine is like a common thing. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I love you. The pain just goes away in seconds. So I'm like, how are we having lauded spiritual teachers saying to people, just don't be angry. You shouldn't be angry.
Yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned the allowing for it to happen, because I'm gonna relate to the cycle of the suffering with anger, because that's the one that is very familiar to me. I I feel sad, and maybe other people will relate to it as well, and you. I feel sad for something because usually a boundary was stepped up, or resentment because you had an expectation for something and so on. Then I get sad. I don't want to feel sad, so I get angry. Then I shouldn't feel angry, so I'll feel shame for feeling angry. And then I'm back to sadness. And then because I'm sad, I'm going to get back to anger and so on.
Yes. Shame is a huge trigger for anger. I think so many of the, like if you were just kind of an alien presence watching human beings, so many of the interactions you see where people go from 0 to 60 in anger is because they're feeling shame.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And this is the worst thing with all of this, is that this is a shadow. When you get anything that, like Deepak Chopra said, you shouldn't feel, and there's any shame around that, like you shouldn't feel that, you should, but I am feeling, so if I shouldn't, it's wrong. So we're going to repress, and the more we repress, the bigger it gets, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to be like a subconscious, unconscious thing that, like you said, it ends up blowing away before you even have the chance to create that space for it, like hold that space, because it's not something that you even allow for it to like be, yeah, I feel angry sometimes,
Yeah.
unless you do the work to like allow, like you were saying.
Yeah. And the space is not like this, not like, oh, I'm creating space for it, I'm holding space, but literally I'm creating distance.
Yeah.
So I'm still feeling it, but I'm
Mhm.
not, I mean, I guess I'm not identifying with it as much.
You're
But
observing.
yeah, yeah. And that, I mean, that's the same concept, different language. So it all is coming back to I'm allowing, and I'm absolutely in love with your method for allowing, which is singing. I am feeling so angry about what's happening to me. I'm gonna punch someone in the face. And
It
there are
works.
rhymes in there, but I mean, I want to take that as like my insight homework is I want to sing or make up some rhymes, like for the thing that I am resisting, whether it's anger or sadness or like future doom.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing that helped me yesterday, particularly, I was I was feeling assured. I thought, and it's not that I was super down or angry or anything, but it was a super new moon, and I should feel really good today because that's what I want to imprint today. And
Yeah.
that was like, that's not really working for me right now. I need to do something different. So I actually decided to get out and allow things to happen, like not control so much. And then there was that moment that I told, like, uh, someone that wasn't safe said hi. I said hi, and then I moved.
Thank you for the clear warning that you're here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I ended up seeing, like, interesting, serendipitous moment. I ended up finding someone else in the because I moved at that exactly moment, that I wanted to talk about working on, what's the name, family constellations a
Oh,
while
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
But that moment actually took me out of my control and into, think all everything felt happens for a reason, and I'm going to do it different now. And then I remembered to sing. I went to another tree. I went singing there, and I allowed the emotions that were there to be sung until I felt clear enough, because I knew that if I was on that energy that I have to feel good, I wouldn't write the right stuff
Yeah.
for my manifestation. So I just sung, and when I was already like good to be laughing at things, I started uh, saying words of gratitude instead of manifestation, because gratitude is the thing that actually helps us reconnect the fastest, at least in my experience, and I know that a lot of people as well. It worked.
That's really brilliant. And being able to gauge, like, where am I in the process of coming out of fear, of coming out of anger, or coming out of the should, and when I can get into like some gratitude first. I have this happen all of the time. I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the Kundalini Kriya, and as I'm doing it, my thoughts are wandering, and I'm like, this is I'm supposed to be having this transcendent moment, and my mind is wandering. And so when it happened this morning, I was like, okay, cool. Well, this is how I'm participating today. The word participate is feeling really potent for me today. And for this year, for 2024, it's like I've kind of got co-words. I have like enrich is at the center of the energy I'm feeling, and then participate is all around it.
Mm.
And participate for me feels so delightful because it's not about how I'm feeling, it's not about the outcome. It's I will just keep not quitting. I will just keep showing up. So that like that immediately took me out of the judgment. My mind was still wandering, but I wasn't suffering anymore. So I'm doing the Kriya. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of thinking about other things. That's how I'm participating today.
I'm still choosing to show up, even if my mind is wandering.
and bring it back by 1 degree, because it is the spiral even farther and farther and farther. It's like trying to fall asleep and you're not falling asleep, so then you get anxious and you're like, I should be falling asleep. And the more you think that, the more anxious you get, and then you're wired.
It's breaking the cycle. Like
Yeah.
if we can catch ourselves and break the cycle, it's one up. You got it. You made it. That's that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of not catching yourself and then going into the shame, because that's just going back into the cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, how freeing is that? We started with it, talking about this context in which human beings are just not very comfortable with. We're not really well practiced in being in joy. It's pretty new to us for good reasons. In our evolution and in our history, we've had to be on guard. And like, this is new. We're learning how to do it. We're beginners. We're really sucking at it right now. And just knowing that any moment we choose to dial back suffering is helping us and is training us. And I can be like, the person who's committed to show up to exercise or do yoga. And I'm like, oh, but I'm still getting over my cold and I don't have 100% of my energy. So I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to rest when I need to. But I know that that effort that I'm putting in, the way I'm participating, is still benefiting me more than sitting around and not moving the energy.
Yeah.
And like any one little thing.
And even choosing not to set things as that's what it is and that's the only way, just like the glass half empty, like this is the objective reality. One of the things that stood with me when you said here was the feeling of I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. I feel like that's something that brings even more suffering, but it in a sense it's also a defense mechanism of feeling like if things go wrong, at least I was expecting it and I wasn't all that in the good. And I actually heard something that for me felt really painful to hear a while ago, because when you love someone, you want them to be happy and you want them to to feel joy. And I heard that we shouldn't love too much, because you end up losing the things that you love. It's like a test. Life is always taking away the things that you love. And it's hard to say.
That thought makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. Let's live in that world.
Yeah.
Of all the cosmologies you could choose, why that one?
That's sad and funny at the same time, because on one hand, I think like, yeah, everyone's going to die. So that eventually that happens.
Yeah,
right?
I think that might actually be a big driving force behind our denial and our defensiveness and our suffering. I know that like the general culture I'm part of living in the US. Obviously, there are so many different subcultures and, you know, different religions and different spiritual traditions, but kind of generally, we don't make a place for death. And last night we were watching, it's like a silly Amazon show where a guy goes and visits countries and has experiences. And he's in India and he's visiting the Ganges, and they're in a boat going down the Ganges, and there are cremations happening on all the steps leading down to it. And his guide is like, oh yeah, there are, you know, this many, it's like over 100, you know, cremations going every day, and it's kind of all the time. And the host is commenting like, oh, in England where I live, this would be something people would kind of do privately, and, you know, it's very sad, and here it's happening. And so I was just struck with like, yeah, acknowledge death. Like, it's not, I'm not saying death isn't sad, but we seem to be surprised every time it happens. And it's what's going to happen to every single one of us. And of course, everyone we love and everyone we don't love and everyone we've never even met and don't care about.
And even things that tend to, like, when you think of loving something,
Yeah.
even if it lasts for your whole life, not everyone dies at the same time. So the things will go away for someone at one point.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe our not wanting to open ourselves up. I wonder how it would look different to embrace the vulnerability of opening ourselves up to love people and things we're going to lose if we had our heads screwed on better about death being part of life. Like what I ended up saying to Grady last night was, don't trust a culture that doesn't have a place for death.
Yes.
There's something real wrong.
I love that you're saying that. Well, Michelle is going to bring her podcast soon, and I think you're gonna love that. There will be place for death there for sure, and probably will be there. So just stay tuned. But the thing with this is that everything that we avoid, death included, all these fears, just end up keeping us from actually enjoying what we have.
And also I think keeping us from doing the practices and gaining the flexibility that would help us suffer less, because there's this rigidity in denial and defensiveness, and we would just, you know, I'll go completely in the other direction. I won't engage with it. It would be like, I mean, man, this morning I was trying to do this Kriya where you stand on one leg and you have your other leg straight out behind you and your spine in a straight line. And I could I'm like up for 2 seconds and I fall, up for 2 seconds and I fall, up for 2 seconds. Right? You know, it's just like, okay, this is how I'm just going to be falling. That's my posture.
Falling Kriya.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like that's how a lot of things can feel in life. Wow, I'm really struggling with this. So what can I do? I can get up and I can keep trying, going, you know, what I'm doing is I'm building the balance, I'm building the muscle strength. It's a weird, unfamiliar feeling in my body, but I'm building some comfort with it, or not comfort, but like it's less, familiarity. Thank you. So I could go, well, I fell out of it and screw it, you know, and I don't want to interact with this anymore and feel shame around it. Or I could be like, oh, I fell, I get up. I fell, I get up. I fell, I get up.
And there's another thing that you're building with that. You're building the discipline and the resilience.
Yes.
Because these practices, especially the hard ones, are also, you might think, oh, I'm failing in this. No, as long as you're getting back to it, you're not failing. You're preparing for moments in life where things are going to fall and you're going to break. And I think it's not going to be exactly everything the way you expect, but you still know how to deal with it.
Yeah. And what a different life we live when we see our own resilience and go, wow, look how many times I got back up. I'm having some identity shifts now that are feeling really powerful, and just even small things like that. Like, I am a person who gets back up.
Yeah. Resilience and discipline should be celebrated.
Yes.
That's for sure. We
Yeah.
celebrate the wins. We celebrate the high moments, the prizes, but we should celebrate the courage and the strength to not give up.
Yeah. I love to hear more of your take on discipline because that's a word that's really feeling delicious to me, like it's calling me in a way it hasn't before. Um, it's 11:11 where I am.
I love that
Um,
it's 11:11 somewhere.
yeah, so I'd like to hear more about how you relate to discipline or how it shows up for you.
Discipline for me is that self-respect, self-honoring, and the commitment with the better version of me.
Ah.
It,
Self-honoring and the commitment with the better version of me. Wow, that's really beautiful.
I used to have my rebellious side and feel like I just want to do whatever I want. But what I see more and more is that when I do honor my discipline with the things that are important for me, like my yoga practice, like my sound practice, um, my prayer, my gratitude, my journaling, these are the things that like keep me on the right path and help me centered and be navigating better everything else in my life. So those practices that are for me, this is what I call even workout, even though I haven't been doing as much as I want. But as long as I have my practices in place, that my discipline with me, and I can build up on it, this is what gives me more freedom. This is what allows me to think straight and be more resilient as well, to be able to do everything that I want because my mind and my body are on board with my soul. So
Mm.
that that's the commitment that
Yeah.
discipline brings.
It's so interesting. I love that. My mind and my body are on board with my soul. And it's so interesting because you talked about the rebellious streak. And the rebellious streak, I think for most of us, I know it comes out for me this way. You languaged it as, I'll do what I want. But you are doing what you want. So it's like, what I want in what context? What I really want when I'm connected, mind, body, and spirit, and I'm focused on like, oh wow, I get to be human and live in this world, and there are these things I want to do, versus the I don't want to, or I want to do something that sabotages the discipline. That want has a little bit of baggage around it. Like there's something
Yeah.
sneaky. It's like, is that a want or is that something else that's like wearing a want costume?
I love that you catch on that because we're talking about mind, body, spirit, right? Mind, body, soul. Uh, the thing that I feel with that rebellious thing is like, who who wants?
Yeah.
Is it my body with its more animal desires, right? Is it my inner child, my emotional body, that rebellious thing that maybe didn't get something when I was a kid, and now I want to get that because it's going against something, and then I just want to get whatever I need to feel safe now. It might be like, I don't know, eating a bucket of ice cream or whatever it is, or like, I don't know, whatever bad thing that's going to create more trouble. Than anyway, that's the is that it, or is it I want, like, in my higher self, my soul, what I can feel that it's the thing that I need.
Yeah. And those other wants, like the want of the child in us, can be, very much around a need that feels like it's not getting met. But I would say like that's really a fear, right?
Yeah.
That's really that young child who's like, oh, I'm worried I'm not going to get I really appreciate this way of framing it, like our strategies for staying alive when we're infants and children kind of calcify into what we think of as our personality,
Mm.
but they're not essential to us in the way our soul self is. It's like, oh, I was funny and that got attention from the adults, and so
Mm.
that's why, right? It's a layer of personality that actually comes from a deep fear. So like when we really dig into it, it's like it's a want. It seems like a want, but it's really a fear. Or it seems like a want, but it's really pushing back, like a reaction, like, you said I have to do that. I'm not gonna do it. Which is often
Mm.
how I experience wants. I like I'll just notice like, I'm just gonna stay in bed, and oh look, I stayed in bed long enough that I missed the start time of yoga this morning, like and I was laughing and I did this on the other morning. I was just kind of cracking up at myself and going, okay, great. This is an experience you are used to having. You're giving it to yourself, the experience of, oops, I ran out the clock, and so I'm missing this thing that I know would really be good for me. I'm like, cool. I'm not gonna judge you for it. But this is helping me to clarify. It's not that I have to think, well, there are some wants that are bad wants and I shouldn't want them, but there are some wants that are really fears or like kind of energy, like you can't make me, you're not the boss of me energy, that
Mm.
are dressed up as wants. And so I don't need to judge them, but I can just go like, oh, you're more of a fear. Can I help you not feel so afraid? And then we'll really you really want some sugar, Megan, because it makes your body feel like, oh, we're getting the sustenance we need. Like, could you have some tea instead? Would that work?
Yeah.
If I help you feel
I tell me more about that. I'm curious about how the "you can't make me" stuff is actually a fear.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that one is a fear. It's a, what would it be?
It might be a fear of being like controlled, trapped.
Yeah. It's like I but I matter. Like you can't make decisions for me that are going to harm me. I think it's that part of my little self who really didn't understand how to create boundaries and how to like trust that other people were going to create boundaries that kept me safe. And so it's like a Tasmanian devil, right? Like if I'm just kind of spinning fast enough and like scratching like this, you can't hold me. So it is, I think, about like contained or controlled in an unsafe scenario. There's this term, inescapable trauma, right? That refers to like you can't, like the killer is like right in your face here and you're just like you're backed up against the wall and you can't move. So a defense in that situation is like I'm just gonna punch in every direction and hopefully you can't get hold of me. Yeah.
Turn into a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, just go full out, full out tantrum, full out spin out. This seems really helpful too as an insight homework, like paying attention to my desires, paying attention to I want with curiosity. And this is such a weird time of year where like a lot of people are, I think, pushed into shame a lot, right? Because it's like it's a new year and we're going to be healthy, whatever that means to us. And so I've resolved I'm going to be healthy, but then I want the thing that isn't in the category of health oh, and now I feel bad. So I'm just gonna like restrain and push back against it. And it doesn't have to be around health, but that just seems like it's probably on a lot of people's minds right now. So instead of like, oh, I want the chocolate, but I'm not going to eat the chocolate, like the examination of, ooh, I'm feeling that want. Whose want is that?
Yeah. And even going back to what you said in the beginning, allowing the want when you feel like, oh yeah, this is okay. Maybe my inner child wants the, I don't know, the bucket of ice cream. Like I said, maybe I can allow a piece of it instead of the full bucket.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's really important too. Like the allowing the feeling, then you get to decide what to do on the other end, like fulfilling it, the action in the world. But we don't even allow the feeling. Like, no, I don't want the ice cream. I'm resolved to be healthy. I'm a very healthy person. I couldn't possibly want. I mean,
Or if you do allow, then you feel shame. No, if you're going to eat the full bucket, then go that and enjoy it, please.
yeah. Yeah, but that like there's two different things to allow. There's allowing the feeling and allowing the action, and there's like a whole process you could take yourself through to like, oh, I'm allowing this feeling and now I'm deciding what I want to do with it. But to
Yeah.
to interrupt the shame of not only the action but the desire in the first place. That'd be a great start.
You know that I don't normally eat sugar or processed flour anymore, except, and I opened the exception after a long time of discipline when I'm celebrating something.
Yeah.
And when it's something like, okay, in this moment is worth uh, allowing. So
Yeah.
I actually had um, dessert on Christmas,
Uh-huh.
and I enjoyed it, and I didn't feel like, oh my god, something bad is going to happen. Yeah, my allergies came for a day or two, but that was okay. I'm back to normal.
Yeah. I had a health coach who used to say, "Oh, um, that's an interesting experiment you're doing."
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, "Oh, that's very kind. That's a very kind way. Like, oh, I'm eating all of the things. Oh, okay. That's an interesting experiment you're doing." So, and then you're like, "Oh, my eyes are puffy. I'm congested." You know, you get the
Yeah.
results. So much easier to shift out of and or shift back to a way of eating that feels supportive if you're
Yeah.
not making it mean something about you.
Yeah. And much easier as well when you see like, oh yeah, my life is actually better with the discipline. So I get to get out of it for a moment when I feel it's worth it and still come back because I'm choosing that this is not my lifestyle, but just a moment I'm enjoying.
Yeah. And it's back to the wants, right? I do what I want. Yes, I do. I,
Consequences.
yeah. Well, no, but and then so you're coming back to like, yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
way I am eating with discipline or the way I am, normally, that is what I want. I'm verifying that in fact was what I wanted.
And it was a good choice.
Yeah. Just needed to try this other thing to confirm. Oh yeah, that makes me feel real crap. Okay.
Yeah. And it also makes me feel really good because I feel like, I went this far that I actually have the discipline that I don't really feel like I need. I can have it whenever I feel like, oh yeah, and today is a good moment to slip uh, into it and still not feel shame, not feel like, oh, now I need to keep eating this and not feel like any of this is my identity. And now because I ate one dessert, I'm no longer me.
Yeah. That's talk about suffering. Talk about suffering. I've made
Often we
one.
suffer for things that we make our identity.
I mean, think about how deeply steeped that is in our culture, like with a, Judeo-Christian shadow of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil,
Mm.
right? One moment, one choice in one moment, and you've doomed all humanity. That's a powerful mythos that's in all of us, that
Yeah.
you could just make one little mistake and wreck everything, and there's no
You're married for life.
redemption. I guess eventually there was redemption, but it took a long, long time. Like, there certainly wasn't any redemption for Adam and Eve themselves. Like, they suffered mightily.
Yeah. Mm.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to creating some more space around the suffering by singing, making some rhymes, and asking who is it that wants that. Those are the things on my radar. What about for you?
I feel, well, I told you in the beginning, this is something that I'm still not completely clear on how to solve. I wish I had an answer of an easier way to get out of the anger wheel.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I got some answers, and this practices might be a big thing is what you said in here as well, catching ourselves. Catching ourselves when we are getting into it, so that we can choose to do something about it, so that we can create that space. Because the biggest problem is not recognizing, not allowing ourselves to see, oh yeah, this is what I'm experiencing, and then things spiral down.
We only have choice with distance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, no, this is, I'm in it. You're like, oh no, I have some distance. I can choose.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's
Well,
beautiful.
let us know in the comments, everybody. Are you gonna pick up your own insight homework, your own activities around creating space, creating choice, and
if you have something,
cycle? Yeah.
and if you have some tips, something that works for you, let us know as well, because we're always growing and evolving.
Yeah, would love to hear. Well, Happy New Year. Take good care.
Happy New Year. See you next time.
See you next time.